As we reported earlier, Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer of the Trump Business Organization, has struck a legal immunity agreement with federal prosecutors. It is the second day in a row a man with close ties to President Trump has made a deal. Weisselberg is reportedly testifying to a grand jury about more than $400,000 in reimbursement payments that he helped arrange to Mr. Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen. Cohen pleaded guilty earlier this week to 8 felonies. Among other things, he told the judge that Mr. Trump directed him to pay hush money to 2 women in exchange for their silence about alleged affairs. Yesterday, another longtime friend of the president, David Pecker, who runs the company that owns the National Enquirer, struck his own immunity agreement. President Trump has railed against flipping, that's the term for turning over information against people who were former confidants. He told Fox News it, quote, ought almost to be illegal. To help explain what we know, or what we think we know about the Trump Organization and the legal questions surrounding these immunity deals, I'm joined by Caleb Melby. He covers business and the Trump Organization for Bloomberg News. And Renato Mariotti. He's a former federal prosecutor who tried white-collar cases, including tax evasion and bank fraud. He is now an attorney in Chicago. Welcome to both of you. So, Renato Mariotti, to you first. What exactly do we understand this immunity agreement with Mr. Weisselberg to mean? What does it represent?
Well, it means, first of all, that Mr. Weisselberg himself had criminal liability. You don't need an immunity deal if you weren't involved potentially in committing a crime. That's the first thing. Second of all, it indicates that prosecutors believe that there was something valuable that they were getting in exchange for his testimony. Prosecutors don't just give away immunity like candy. They have a specific reason for doing so. So here it appears Mr. Weisselberg's cooperation was at the very least helpful to prosecutors in securing the conviction of Michael Cohen, who pled guilty earlier this week. I think the question is there other potential value in that testimony beyond that? And I think that's an important question going forward. And
that's what I wanted to ask you, staying with you, Renato Mariotti, because the Wall Street Journal, there have been other reports about his testifying to the grand jury last month. And the question is it just around the Michael Cohen payments to these 2 women, or is it something broader? How do we read that?
Well, it's interesting, Judy, because even if you look at the Michael Cohen payments, those payments resulted in false statements within the records of the Trump Organization. The Wall Street Journal story that broke this talks a little bit about that. But, for example, Mr. Cohen submitted a request for payment to be on retainer for, I think it was $35,000 a month, and included other payments. There's, I think, a $50,000 consulting fee and so on, that were not actually the truth. And those are laid out in the charging documents that the Justice Department filed in New York charging Michael Cohen. And so the question is, if there are false financial statements in the Trump Organization books, who is at the Trump Organization responsible for that? Was that false information ever transmitted to others, for example, to a bank, in order to obtain a loan? That would be bank fraud. So Mr. Weisselberg did, it certainly appears that he's around criminal activity there. And I think the real question now is, are federal prosecutors looking at others in the Trump Organization, including potentially family members, and also the New York Attorney General has an investigation of these matters as well.
So, Caleb Melby, you've covered the Trump businesses for several years. Tell us exactly what Alan Weisselberg's role is there.
Yeah, I mean, the question really is what his role isn't. If you think about the Trump Organization, Donald Trump, the Trump children, Donald loves to talk about his biggest, most beautiful assets. He loves golf courses, and he loves opening up international hotels and condominium buildings around the world that have his name on it, even if he doesn't own them. But he's not a finance guy. He's not somebody who can tell you what the net operating income from this building is or what the interest payment on that loan is. And Alan Weisselberg is that guy in almost all cases. So he's the guy who's negotiating negotiating these international licensing agreements. He's the guy who's talking with banks, especially post-financial crisis, to get the loans that the Trump Organization needs to do business on a day-to-day business schedule. So he's really very close to the details of everything that actually makes the Trump Organization run.
So reflecting back on what we just heard Renato Mariotti say about what federal investigators would be looking at, Alan Weisselberg could well be or is the person inside the Trump Organization who knows about loans, transactions, and so forth, specifically, that go well beyond this Michael Cohen matter.
Absolutely. Trump's personal finances beyond the businesses, his taxes, his charity. And keep in mind that when Trump became president of the United States, he put all of his assets and companies into a trust, and he put his 2 children and Weisselberg in charge of that trust.
So Renato Mariotti, trying to understand this, once Mr. Weisselberg has been granted legal immunity, is he then expected to talk about that entire collection of information, business information that he has about the Trump empire? What are federal investigators able to ask him about and expect an answer on?
Well, typically, Judy, in exchange for immunity, you agree to cooperate with the government, full stop. In other words, you're not cooperating just with one component of the Justice Department. You're cooperating with the Justice Department completely. Typically, federal and state authorities work hand in hand, and so I would expect, for example, that he would also agree to cooperate with state authorities as well. And the real question is, what else are federal prosecutors looking at? Now, to be clear, as I pointed out a moment ago, even if they're just looking at these transactions, there are various assorted crimes. And as was just mentioned a moment ago, that trust, for example, it was actually mentioned in the Cohen charges, and Mr. Weisselberg, and then there's another individual. It's not clear who that other individual is, but it could be, for example, one of those family members is mentioned. So this could potentially expand very quickly to other individuals, even if prosecutors are focused on that transaction, because I don't expect prosecutors to just ask willy-nilly about everything related to the Trump Organization.
Caleb Melby, how transparent has the Trump Organization been over the years? How much is known? We know the president has not released his own tax returns, but how much is known? How much is not known? What are the questions you as a reporter would have about it?
Well, yeah, we've seen throughout the campaign and throughout the election all sorts of stories about, say, their relationship with Deutsche Bank or the relationship with certain partners overseas that have had their own legal troubles in those jurisdictions. It's a private company. They have not disclosed typically more than anything that any other private company does. The one benefit reporters have had over the last couple of years is that personal financial disclosure that Trump has filed in conjunction with being a candidate and being the president. Of course, that's information that they've self-disclosed. There's no real audit or review independent to help confirm the accuracy of that information. So the sorts of stuff that we could get answers to are the sorts of things that people have been asking questions about for the last 2 years.
Well, as we say, so many questions. We're only beginning to get some of these answers, and we thank you both. Caleb Melby with Bloomberg News, Renato Mariotti. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.